When you start creating content, one of the first big decisions that you're going to have to make is what you record your content on. In front of me, I have the iPhone 16 Pro Max, the Osmo Pocket 3, the Sony a6700 with the Sigma 16mm 1.4 lens, and then finally the Sony ZV-E1 with the Sony 16mm 1.8 G lens. All of these cameras are applicable to creators. Which one is right for you all depends on what sort of content that you create and what you care about as a creator when it comes to filming. And so in this video, I'm going to talk about my own experiences in using all of these different cameras, talk about some of the pros and cons, and try and help you understand which one of these is right for you, or whether if you already own one of these, is upgrading to something better the right decision. So first up is the iPhone 16 Pro Max. For the context of this video, I'm just going to talk about this like a phone as a camera. So whether you own an Android like a Samsung or Google, it doesn't matter. I think the obvious main pro of a phone as a camera is you just have it on you all the time. Pick it up, just record, and it kind of looks okay. You don't really have to faff around with a load of settings, and for some people that is perfect because the content that they create doesn't require them to have like perfect lighting and perfect quality. And the other benefits of using a phone is you can also download apps like the Blackmagic camera app to give you a little bit more control if you do want that, as well as downloading like an editing app like CapCut, which is my highest recommendation for a mobile app when it comes to editing. Very simple, very easy to use, and you obviously can't do that on the other devices. So I think the iPhone just has so many simple use cases that make it a really good thing to use to start with. However, some of the cons, I would say the main one is that phones don't perform that well in low light. You'll find that when you're using phones outside, they look great, but when you're using them inside where there's not as much natural light, they don't look so good. You can kind of combat this by obviously having good lighting, but also using the back camera instead of the front, because the back camera just looks better. But again, you kind of come with the problem that you can't see the camera or like getting yourself in the right position. You can mirror it to your laptop to help overcome this. But again, that requires additional setup, and that might get in the way of you just picking up the camera and filming. So when it comes to answering the question of who is a phone as a camera like aimed at, I would say people who are just getting started, people who are struggling with consistency and kind of want to reduce the barriers to filming. I also think it's great for people who are in niches that perhaps quality doesn't matter so much. There's this ongoing debate on how much, video quality matters, and audio is way more important. And I do agree, audio is important. I don't think it's way more important. I think video still is, depending on the niche you're in and the content that you create. If you're a tech creator and having high quality video is going to signal more trust, I think it's important. However, if you're a creator that's sort of just talking about life or personal development, then quality doesn't matter so much. So if your goal is just simple, quick, convenient, pick up the camera and just shoot, get you started, get you kind of in the rhythm of creating content, using your phone is more than enough for you to get started with. Next up is the Osmo Pocket 3. This has been a very popular camera over the last year and a half, 2 years. I mean, it came out like a year and a half ago, primarily because it's just so small. I think the main benefits of this device is the gimbal, because it just has such good stabilization and just tracking. You can literally just spin around in a room and it just tracks to your face, which none of these other cameras can actually do unless you have a gimbal. It also actually has a better sensor than the iPhone as well, which means the image quality is actually better, as well as having a little flip screen on the front so you can actually see yourself. There are also other benefits, including like different attachments that you can buy. I've got one where it's like magnetic, which I think is the most OP feature for me, because when I'm out filming and I want to film B-roll, I can just stick this to anything and just film myself. Like, I can't really do this with the bigger cameras. I have to have a tripod. You can also get like ND filters, and I've also got this little stand as well. There's a whole array of different attachments that I also think add to the value of an Osmo Pocket 3. And so looking at some of the cons of it, I would say it's also not as great in low light. It's better than an iPhone, but it's still not fantastic in low light. It looks great outside, and some people will say, yeah, I can get it looking as good as my APS-C or my full frame, but when you take it inside and when you don't get the natural light, the quality of the video does start to degrade. Another thing is the battery life isn't particularly great. I found that mine lasts between an hour and a half and 2 hours. You can get a little extendable battery, but when you compare it to the phone battery, you know, it doesn't compare whatsoever. And then that kind of brings us on to the other con, is that there's no real upgrade here. It kind of is what it is. There's no like variable zoom, you don't get any lenses. You know, that might not be that important to you, but I do think this is fantastic. And I think when it comes to who I think this is right for, I would say people who generally are filming a lot of content on the go, in different locations, in different places. Similar content maybe to the iPhone. You just maybe want something that just has a little bit better video quality, and also just has that like really nice tracking feature so you can film on the go. Because when I was filming like vlogs out and about, and I was originally using my iPhone before I had a camera, I just found it kind of annoying, like using my phone like that. It's kind of very obvious. And another thing I actually didn't highlight about this, the Osmo is really discreet in public. If you're kind of like me and a lot of creators where you're not used to filming in public and you don't really like holding up a camera and people looking at you, you can do this so discreetly with the Osmo. You can just hold it by your side to get like B-roll shots of, you know, on the train and you don't want people looking at you. You can adjust the gimbal so that like it looks to the left and looks to the right, where you're like discreetly holding it and nobody's looking at you. Or what I found as well is that like I'll be holding my iPhone, pretending like I'm on the phone, but also holding my Osmo next to it, like, and just filming like that. And it just makes me feel a lot more comfortable filming out in public. And for some people, that's such a big thing. And I think it's such a valuable kind of pro in that it's just really discreet. And so before I move on to the second half of the video, I just want to talk about a few things. And one of those things is lighting. I mentioned briefly how these two cameras don't perform too well in low light. And I just cannot stress enough how important lighting is. Lighting will transform the video of all of these cameras, but it will have a more drastic impact on these ones that don't perform well in low light. So please, 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 before you decide to upgrade from the iPhone to the Osmo, Osmo to the APS-C, APS-C to full frame, please just invest in good lighting and you will be amazed how much of an impact it has on the video that you shoot, no matter what device you film on. And then the second thing I want to talk about is actually the sponsor of this video. This is my first sponsored video on YouTube. I've waited a long time to actually integrate a sponsor into this video, so don't skip this part. You don't need to, because it is actually important, because I've specifically chosen a brand to work with that fits in with the video, and that is Sandisk. Sandisk makes storage solutions. Storage solutions are not the sexiest thing in the world. Nobody thinks they are, but unfortunately, when you create content, you're gonna need storage. It don't matter whether you shoot on an iPhone, an Osmo, or one of these cameras, you need something to store your content on, because as you film more content, the storage gets bigger. I wish it didn't. And so Sandisk actually sent me out some storage solutions as part of their new creator kit that come in this sort of really nice blue color. And I'm just gonna talk through some of those storage solutions and how they're applicable to each of these devices. So first up are these two USB-C flash drives. One is aimed at iPhones, as it actually has a lightning connector, and then you flip it round and it's got a USB-C connector. And then the other one just has a USB-C connector, which is aimed more at Androids. What is great about these is these allow you to just plug them straight into your phone. And if you're deciding to record in ProRes, where the files are massive, you can actually record them directly onto these drives, and then you can then easily plug these into your laptop to transfer your files quickly and easily. Next up is the SD card and the micro SD card. I'm actually using these in the devices in front of me. As you'll know, the Osmo Pocket 3 takes a micro SD card, which you just slot in the side here. And then I'm also using the SD card in my Sony ZV-E1 because it's just super fast. I just take that out, plug it into my laptop, and just transfer my files. Also, you know, like I said, comes in that nice blue color. And then when it comes to actually editing on your laptop, I am a big fan of transferring files off of my laptop because I just ran out of storage. So firstly, I'm using the hard drive that Sandisk sent me. This is fantastic, comes in 4 or 8 terabytes, literally just sits on my desk, and every time I edit a video, now the project goes onto this. And then when I'm editing on the go, I recently actually just came back from Spain, as you can see, got a glowing tan. I was using this, the SSD, which is super fast. I basically transferred a number of different projects that I had to edit whilst I was away that I just needed to get finished, transferred them onto this, was editing straight from this with no problems in Premiere Pro, and I just kind of just love the size of this. It's just so small, again, love the color, super easy to use, super fast. Would highly recommend it as well. And if you click the link in the description below, it will take you through to the Creator Series landing page where you can find out more information about the different products, take a look at the specs in a bit more detail, and you can also get different discounts when you combine different products together to save a little bit of money when you inevitably are going to need to buy more than one of these storage solutions. And so, right, moving on to the bigger boys. Firstly, we have the Sony a6700 with Sigma 16mm 1.4 lens. I've been using this camera and lens for a while. I'm actually filming on a Sony a6400 as well, because I actually have not got any other camera to film on, which I've been using for a while. And so the main pros of an APS-C camera like this compared to, I guess, these, because a lot of people are probably asking themselves, do they need a camera like this? I think the pros of a camera like this is just, you'll notice the image quality or the video quality is just a lot better. As I said, performs a lot better in low light. You've just got that clarity. It's like I would describe when you go from 1080 to 4K, you don't really notice the difference too much. And then when you go back from 4K to 1080, you're like, whoa. Oh my God, I can't believe I ever used 1080. That's how I would usually describe the jump from these to like an APS-C or a full frame. The other great thing about cameras like this is they just have interchangeable lenses, which you can't get on these cameras. And they also have like fantastic autofocus as well. And the thing that the lenses also offer is you get that sort of like blurry bokeh background that people kind of love. I love it as well. Not so much on this lens I'm using now. I'm using a Sigma 24 to 50 2.8, but this lens is fantastic. When it comes to like what APS-C camera to start with, the a6700 is around £1,200. I would say if that's a bit too expensive, you could look at getting the Sony a6400. You could also look at getting the Sony ZV-E1 Mark I, which is a great sort of video vlogging camera, or the Sony ZV-E1 Mark II. Sony a6400, the Sony ZV-E1 Mark I, both shoot 4K. The downside is that they just have slightly older technology when it comes to the autofocus, and the menu screen is not one of the new ones, but overall the quality is still pretty much the same. Where if I was to use this a6400 alongside this a6700 with the same lens and the same lighting, you wouldn't really be able to tell like a huge amount of difference with content on social media. When it comes to the cons of a camera like this, I would say it's obviously price. And then the lens, this lens costs about $300-400. Plus, you know, you're gonna need an SD card. I've got a frame here. You might need some ND filters, other accessories, you add all that up. It does start to get a little bit expensive. There's also obviously now a big learning curve. You've gone from easy to use, slightly harder to use with some more settings. This compared to these, there's a hell of a lot more settings. You can kind of learn these through just watching some YouTube videos. There's plenty of YouTube videos on how to set up cameras like this and just get a little bit of understanding of which modes to use for when you're filming in different locations. But again, just takes a little bit of time to understand how to properly use the camera and get the best out of it. And so when it comes to, again, answering the question of who do I think this sort of camera is for, I would say if you're someone that shoots a lot of content inside and you do talking head, and you shoot in low light, I think this is a reasonable camera or upgrade to get, because what I do is I have mine just on like a desk tripod. It just sits there. I have a dummy battery in it and I just switch it on and record. I don't move this camera around everywhere because I don't need to. I film a lot of my content just at the desk, and then I have secondary cameras for filming away from my desk. I would also say this camera is aimed at people that just want better quality. There's nothing wrong with that. You know, we went through that sort of kind of debate at the start of like, oh, well, does it actually matter? You know, when it comes to views and the video's performing better, maybe not. But does it matter to you? Perhaps. You might have already been using a phone camera for a while, then got on Osmo, and now you're just ready to upgrade because you just want better quality, and there's nothing wrong with that. Whether that's overkill, whether you need it, different question. Do I need a Sony ZV-E1? Probably not, but I've just gone through this sort of slow transition of being like, do you know what? I want to just spend a little bit of cash on a little bit of better camera. And then finally, moving on to the Sony ZV-E1. I have actually recently bought this camera, and so I'm going to talk about why I've just gone from an APS-C, which I've been using for 4 years now, the a6400 and the a6700 for a couple of years. And so the reason why I decided to upgrade to the ZV-E1 is mainly because of the lens. And what you'll find is you don't choose to go full frame because you want a full frame camera because it has lots more features, because the difference in features between APS-C cameras and full frame cameras is actually not that great. This was a misconception that I had. I thought when you go to a full frame camera, like they just have tons more features, but actually you'll find that the Sony a6700 and the Sony ZV-10 Mark II actually have quite a lot of the same features as the full frame cameras until you start going up to the really sort of high-end professional ones that cost 4 or 5 grand, and they're not really aimed at creators. So when I'm speaking like for creators, the reason why you upgrade to full frame is because you get access to a wider variety of lenses. You obviously get a larger sensor, which means that you can just get a wider shot. And that's primarily why I bought this camera, because I wanted this Sony 16mm 1.8 G lens. This is wide. Oh my God, I'm just gonna show you an example now of the difference between the a6700 with the 16mm versus the Sony 16mm, and you'll just see how much of a difference there is here just because it's on a full frame camera and it's just got a wider sensor. This also means that it is just elite in low light compared to the cameras on this side, and for me, who shoots a lot of content in low light, that's really important to me. This ZV-E1 does also have the same sensor as the famous FX3, which everyone buys. And the only real main differences is that the FX3 has a built-in fan, it has dual SD card slots, it has a different body, and a few other features. And so actually I think the ZV-E1 is such a fantastic camera for someone that wants to upgrade to an entry-level full frame. This will pretty much meet all your needs. But do I think this camera is overkill for social media? Did I need this camera for short form content? I would say no. I would say short form content is the type of content that I think you need quality less versus YouTube. I think YouTube is more important. You can upload in 4K. People sometimes are obviously watching on monitors, their desktop rather on their phone. I just think that content in horizontal format blown up, like you can just do a lot more with video, and I think that's where you get more value for money. But yeah, it does come at a cost. The lenses are more expensive on full frames, and so I would only go to a full frame once you've gone through, I guess, the same transition that I've gone through, like from phone to Osmo / APS-C. You're kind of using a Sigma lens here and maybe a zoom one that I've got there. And then when you want to start unlocking the more expensive Sony lenses that are just better, that's when you want to go for a full frame. But yeah, I hope that was helpful. I hope I've answered some of the questions maybe you had in your head. I hope I've given you a bit more clarity on whether you think it's the right time to upgrade to one of these cameras or get one of these. If you've got any more questions, drop them in the comments, I'll try and answer them. But other than that, I hope this video was valuable, hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one.